Hello friends, a doll friend asked me about the hat I made in my Valentine's video. She doesn't have a lot of sewing confidence, so I'm making this video to try and help everybody make their own witch's hat. I like to use felt to make this type of hat because many hats are actually felted anyway, and this means you don't need to hem any circular edges, which can be a bit tricky. So because of this, there are two different types of stitches that we're going to use. One, I don't think you'll know, I didn't know the name of it at least. The other one you probably will know. So the first one is a figure 8 stitch. I'm using thick thread and differently coloured felt to try and show you the stitches. The first one being the figure 8 stitch. It looks a bit like a herringbone to me. It's a little bit tricky, but it gives this piece a really good finish. You need to put both of the pieces of fabric next to each other with no overlap. You can pin the pieces together, but when you do, be careful not to overlap them. I'm just going to show you from the front because this is how I sew it, but if it's easy for you, then make sure to turn it over while you're working. Put your needle through the back of the piece, pull the thread through, then put your needle between the two pieces of fabric. Put your needle into the back of the other piece of fabric, pull it through to the front, and then keep doing that for as long as you need to. I sped the footage up quite a lot so it doesn't bore your brains out, but like you can slow it down in the settings or watch it a couple of times. With sewing you need to be patient and just not stress that out. Sometimes you might need to remake things. This is foreshadowing. I still do that a lot, and I've been sewing for more than 25 years. The back and front will look pretty similar with this stitch. So the second stitch is a whip stitch, or you might know it as an overcast stitch. This is quite common and I think you might already know it. So you put the two pieces of fabric right sides together, put your needle through the back of the fabric, pull your needle through and pull your thread through, then go round the fabric and insert it back into the back of the fabric again in front of your last stitch, and then keep going until you're finished. This one has a right and a wrong side, whereas the figure of 8 stitch looks really similar on both sides. So to draft the pattern, I talked about this in my Valentine's vid, so that might be good to watch as well if you want some pointers. You need to get some measurements. The only one that I actually measure is the circumference of the doll's head. And I've labelled this as C in the diagrams. The rest I just kind of eyeball. So using a piece of paper, I wrap that around the doll's head. After that, you can decide how big you want the brim of your doll's hat to be, and it's totally up to you. Okay. You could also make the brim asymmetrical if you wanted, by making one side longer than the other. And that would look kind of like a bonnet. I think that would be pretty cute. I've drawn this brim as a circle, but actually the doll's head is more of an oval, and you can see that draft in my Valentine's video. When you've decided the brim, you can freehand that circle around it. Then you need to decide how tall you want your doll's hat to be. So for like a normal classical witch's hat, you need to draw a curve that is the same as the circumference of the doll's head, and then from the middle of that line draw a straight line up as tall as you want the doll's hat to be. Then draw lines from the ends of the curved line up to the end of that line you've just drawn. In this video I'm going to talk through making a witch's hat with a bit of a floppy brim and a wobbly cap, because that's what my friend wants to make. Of course you can mix up these pieces, so if you want a hat with a flat brim and a wobbly cap, you can just make those two pieces, or if you want a floppy brim and a straight cap, then that's totally possible as well. So for a floppy brim you need that C shape for the circumference of the doll's head. So rather than drawing a circle, you're going to draft it into a C shape, and depending on how big that opening is in the C is how floppy your cap will be. So the smaller the gap, the less pronounced the flop, if that makes sense. Make sure that the inside of the C is the circumference of the doll's head, otherwise it is going to be a bit too small. To be fair, that's not the end of the world and it'll still look quite cute, but you might need to pin it to the doll's head. So to make a wobbly cap part, you can either draft it like I did in the Valentine's video, or you can do it with wobbly shapes that I did here. So actually this shape didn't work for me and I ended up redrafting it while I was making it. So I cut a strip of paper to find the circumference of Abby's head, and then I'm drafting the shape here that will make the brim. While I was drafting, I kind of realised that I didn't want the hat to be so floppy. That's why I changed the shape a little bit. Then I fold it in half and I try to make sure that the brim is the whole width the way round. And then I cut it while it's in half to make sure it's symmetrical. I didn't like the shape that I drafted for the cap, but the curve is sound, so make sure that you do a good curve. So again, I'm using different colours to make sure that it's easier for you to be able to see. To put the brim together, we're using that figure of 8 stitch. If you're drafting a flat brim, then you don't need to do this, so just ignore this part. And again, I'm using the figure of 8 stitch to close up the back of the cap. This is where I realised I didn't like the shape that was appearing as I was sewing, so I cut it again, and even when I'd cut it I realised that I didn't think it was going to be a good shape, so I took some of the angles out and made it more of a curve than sharp angles. It's really normal to have to remake things, so don't get disheartened if you do find that you have to make a piece twice. Like when I'm drafting a pattern, I tend to make the thing a couple of times actually, so really don't get down on yourself. Everything is better the second time round. I actually really like the shape that came out with this hat, both the cap and the brim. You could even sew in a piece of wire to make it easier to mold or like remold, but if you wet felt and then pin it to dry, it'll keep the shape that you've put it in. To sew the cap and brim together, I'm using a whip stitch. If I did this again, I'd probably put the whip stitches closer together, and I did do that on the Valentine's doll hat actually. I think I was just trying to put this together pretty quickly because I wanted to get this done before midnight, but it's now 2 AM, so that didn't work. I actually even really like the pink and the red together. The floppy brim is super cute. I like how it turned out. I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know if there's anything that wasn't clear in the comments, and then I can give you a bit more of an explanation. I do still make these pattern making videos, but just not as much as I used to, because they are quite hard to do. But I've got some footage that I need to edit together, and let me know if there's anything in particular that you want. So subscribe, that would be great. You can keep up to date with my awesome videos, or give me a like, that would be awesome too. And I hope to see you again soon with my next video. Thank you again, thanks as always, bye.